You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. We spend so much of life struggling, but what if the key was actually yielding? Join me for an episode that turns the way we live life on its head. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we look at how easy it is to stay busy, scattered, and convinced we don't have time to pause. Yet the very habits that keep us rushing drain our energy and leave us feeling scattered. Jeff Patterson from Portland, Oregon, has over 36 years of experience practicing and teaching the meditative and martial arts. He is the founder of Northwest Fighting Arts and Portland Tai Chi Academy, where he emphasizes the transformative power of meditative and martial arts practices, particularly the yielding concept. He has published 2 books and hundreds of instructional videos, is the founder of the Yielding Warrior online program, and has worked with thousands of students from around the world. Let's meet Jeff Patterson. Hi, Jeff. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because we'll be talking about the meditative arts, and I know there is a lot we can talk about there, and I think so much information that also will be of interest to our listeners and very helpful and supportive in their healing journeys. So I'm very excited to dive in and explore this with you. Thank you so much for being here today, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Jeff, to start us off, could you share a little bit about yourself and maybe the parts of your journey or your story that you feel connect to what you do today and how you came to do what you do today? And also share with our listeners what it is that you do today.
Yeah, so I've been running a meditation center and martial arts academy here in Portland for about 30 years. And as a fairly young guy, I was very much into Western boxing. And I remember going to a boxing gym where your traditional style boxing gyms, it's not like a normal fitness class where there's a teacher up in front of a group of students. Usually there's a few coaches running around, and each one of those coaches might have a handful of fighters they're working with. Well, at this one particular gym, one of the coaches was a very well-known coach and had created champions on both the amateur and the professional arena. And I wanted to get to spend some time with him, but his card was full. He wasn't looking to take on any new athletes. So I would always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there and work hard and try to get him to notice me. And after a few months of following him around, he finally started helping me out and giving me some tips. And it was only about maybe 2 or 3 weeks of getting to work with him when he said something to me that changed my life in many ways. He told me that if I wanted to be good at boxing, I should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. And at the time, I was this 19-year-old kid who didn't know much of anything, thinking, how is that going to help me? Isn't that for like old people in the park? What am I going to do with that? And I had a lot of respect for him, and I started the practice. And while it might have taken me a little while to get seasoned and really see it, it not only has it changed my life in many ways through the years. I've had over 26,000 students come through the academy here and thousands more online. And I've heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively helped people through illness and injuries and mental struggles with stress, and then just help also the performers, whether it be mental performance or physical performance, use the meditative arts to reach higher levels of their ability. And I've just heard so many positive stories with the practice through the years that that's what's really given me the energy and the motivation to promote these arts and write my last few books and just try to get the message out there to help more people.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm picturing this gym in my head with the boxers and a confused look of why would I have to do Tai Chi? So, yeah, I feel like some of our listeners can probably relate to that when we talk about coming on a healing journey and also just taking care of ourselves and being told, oh, you should meditate, and there being all sorts of notions going off in your head, things that you've heard on the internet, and thinking about, oh my goodness, I can't meditate, or I can't do this, or can't do that, or I'm way too busy for that. My mind is too busy for that. So when we say meditative arts, what does that actually encompass? Are there different types of meditations or different types of meditative arts? Is Tai Chi or Qigong, for example, included in meditative arts? Or what does that mean when you say meditative arts?
Yeah, so there are many. And within the meditative arts, we have movement practices, still practices, breath work, studying philosophical concepts. They could be things from sitting meditation, standing meditation, walking meditations, movement meditations like Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga, breathwork strategies. There's many different areas. Within the meditative arts, no matter what path you follow, there's what I call the five motivations of the practice. And they are people turn to the practice to help with their performance, to help with their therapeutic benefits as far as their longevity and overall body health. The medical side of the practice, which is more towards all of Chinese medicine, is based off of Qigong theory, which is a meditative art. So that's a very deep path to follow. And a lot of people who are suffering with illness come to it for those reasons. And then there's the philosophical side of the practice, which is something I've always been very passionate about. And part of the reason why I enjoy the philosophical side is that it really helps open up and expand your vision. So you see things from multiple angles, and this can help you be more strategic, which is always a lot of fun. And then there is the spiritual side of the practice. And you have these kind of five different directions, and you can use the different practices and arts to follow any one of those paths. And you would just incorporate different things that would help you down a specific path. And I like that you mentioned that a lot of people think that they don't have enough time to practice. And I get two things that I hear over and over again, and that's one of them. And everybody has time to integrate the meditative arts into their life. The Dalai Lama once said that everybody should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should meditate for an hour. And I love that, in that we all have that time, and it's so important to stay connected. And what I find is that people that often have high stress jobs or careers where they feel like they're too busy to take on something like meditation, they're the ones that need it the most. And when they do, while it may be difficult for them at first, once they integrate this practice and this kind of way of life and living, they see that by their enhanced awareness and their ability to stay more present and focus and be more clear, that oftentimes they get more done because they're integrating kind of this more focused mindset into their life, and they're not so scattered and off in every angle. And it can help anybody. And one way to start for somebody that does feel like they're busy is just take the first 10, 15 minutes of every day. And when your alarm goes off, instead of picking up your phone and scrolling through the social media or looking at your calendar and looking at all the distractions that you have, take a few minutes at that time where your mind is the most settled and relaxed, and do some breath work, do a movement practice, go over some philosophical concepts or some things that help train the mind to think certain ways and be more relaxed, because the mental side of the training is very important. And our mind is like a muscle. the more that we program it and we train it to think certain ways and to respond in certain ways and to pay attention to that present moment in relaxation, the more that that starts to feed over into every moment of our lives. Just taking a few minutes every morning and doing this can be extremely powerful, and you'll be surprised at all the benefits that will come by having a little bit of this time.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would just change also the whole setup for your day if you're just taking that time in the morning to have that experience with yourself. You start into the day in a completely different way as well. I can definitely see that. Now, is 10, 15 minutes in the morning enough to have a meditation practice? Or what do you, in your experience, recommend for the people who you work with and for yourself also? Is it more important to do longer meditations or spend more time with that? Or is there a certain type of meditation that's better than another one for individual people? Or is this a very personal thing that each person has to sort of decide or find for themselves?
Yeah, so there's a lot of directions we can take that question. However, one thing that I like people to understand is that consistency is so much more important than saying on Saturday, I'm going to go meditate for 3 hours. If you do a little bit every day, you're going to reap a lot more benefits from that. Now, as far as a general time for all of my newer students coming to the academy, I always tell them, let's make the commitment of doing 20 minutes a day. And then this would be a ritual side of the practice where it could be that morning session where they're doing some breath work or some movement practices. But then it's also important to integrate some active practices. And what I mean by active practices is these can be things that you do when you're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store. And they allow you to train yourself to come back to that present moment and find that physical, mental, and emotional awareness throughout the day. And as long as we keep revisiting those, doing our 20-minute ritual, maybe throwing some philosophical training in there, if we do that on a regular basis, you can really see a lot of change in a fairly short amount of time, because it's not like this empty goal that you're trying to find. It's something that you're changing immediately about how you live. And those changes that we do consistently and start making part of our daily patterns, they can affect us sometimes in some very dramatic ways. As far as any one technique, I don't think any one technique is better than the other. What I do recommend for new students is that, and this has been one of my biggest struggles through the years, I've been teaching for over 30 years. How do I get people to understand the value of meditation and to really put the effort in so they can reap all the benefits of the practice? And what I've come up with through the years is I have these things I call the 3 considerations. And I find that if somebody is coming to the practice and they could spend a little bit of time and energy when they're beginning their practice with these 3 considerations, that their chances of seeing the benefits and really reaping the most benefits for their efforts are really going to excel. And the first one is thinking about, why am I being drawn to the practice, or what reasons, what things do I want to get out of this practice? Whether it's staying healthier into your later years to watch your grandkids grow up, or dealing with a stress disorder or a health issue, or maybe you're a performer of some sort and you want to improve your performance, whatever that is. And then once you find that, think of 10 or 20 things that will positively change in your life because you accomplish this goal. And this adds value and gives you that energy in those times when you're feeling like you don't want to do the practice. Then I like them to flip the coin. And if they don't do this and accomplish this, what are 10 or 20 negative things that will happen and they'll see by not integrating these changes? And when they do this, They start to see the practice as something they get to do and they get excited about it rather than something that they have to do where it's some chore that they do every day. And this mental shift is huge for their overall success with the practice. The second consideration, which we've already touched on briefly, is the idea of consistency. And there is this story that I enjoy about this old stonecutter. He's very well known all over China. He makes these beautiful sculptures of animals and landscapes. And his work is so detailed and so unique that anytime somebody sees it from anywhere, they just know that it's his work. And because of this, he has people from all around that come to train with him, and they'll stay with him for a few years at a time to learn the trade and see why his work is so special. Well, every day, this old stonecutter, he begins the day by going down to the river and meditating. One day after his meditation session, he's walking along the river, and he has this profound vision of this big 6-foot tall, mystical Chinese jade dragon. And he's so taken by the dragon that he just knows this has to be his next project. So he spends the next few months traveling all over looking for the perfect piece of stone for his new creation. Finally, when he finds it, he brings it back to his place and spends the next period of time, day in and out, just sitting with the stone, feeling the energy, envisioning how this dragon will soon appear in the stone. And then one day when he begins working on the stone, he carefully places his chisel on the backside of the stone and starts tapping away with his hammer, hundreds, if not thousands of times a day to the exact same spot, and nothing's changing. A few days go by and still nothing. A few more days went by and no change, no cracks, nothing. His apprentices started saying, maybe he should try something else. And they started second guessing him. A few more days went by. Finally, he taps the stone, and this big 3-foot section of the stone comes off the backside of the rock, and it creates this smooth, slightly curved line that's soon to be part of the dragon's back. One of his apprentices who was watching said, "How did you know that that strike was going to break the stone?" And the stonecutter smiled and said, "It wasn't that strike that broke the stone. It was the thousands of strikes before it that broke the stone." And with a bit of a discouraged tone, the apprentice said, "But I've been watching you, and there was no change, not even a scratch. Why keep doing the same thing over and over again?" And the stonecutter got down on one knee, and he felt the smooth line that he just created, and he said, "Each strike was not wasted. The stone was changing beneath the surface. And not only was the stone changing, so was the one who wields the hammer." And the reason why I resonate so well with this story is that this is the meditative arts. We're practicing these breathing strategies, these sitting meditations, studying these philosophical concepts. We don't always see the change happening day to day, but through our consistent efforts, we're able to reap the benefits of these fruits for the rest of our lives. And having that consistency is key in the practice. And then the third and final consideration is you need to find a guide. If you think that you're going to sift through the thousands of videos on YouTube or all of this different information out there and approach these arts and get any kind of depth in the practice, you're going to waste a lot of time. And I've literally seen people come into the academy who have been self-taught, that have been training 10, sometimes 15 years, and they're barely scratching the surface on what they can do. And oftentimes they'll see people that have been training for 6 months or 12 months that are a lot further along in their practice than they are. And your life is short, your time is valuable. Find somebody to help you. And if you do this, you think about your why and really put some effort into that, understand consistency and have a guide, your chances of success are almost guaranteed.
Thank you for sharing that beautiful story. And I can definitely resonate with that as well. It happens a lot like that, I think, when we talk about especially holistic healing and some of the things that we do consistently, but we don't always right away see the results happening in front of our eyes. But there are things changing inside, there are things changing under the surface. So, this is such an important thing I feel to put out there as well, is for listeners to be aware that even when we don't physically see things changing, there are still shifts happening in our bodies and also energetic shifts and other shifts happening. So, thank you for sharing that. I think that captured that absolutely beautifully. And I do want to ask you a little bit about the changes that happen because I feel that there is an expectation that something should change if we start, let's say, a serious and consistent meditation practice. That we can't be the same person who started that practice as we will be maybe weeks or months or years down the road. So I know that some of these changes have been captured in functional MRIs, and there have been studies on what meditation does to the brain. But what kind of changes are we actually talking about for people who are maybe looking for physical changes, changes in their health, or to certain things they're going through, challenges they're going through? What kind of changes do you observe in your students? What have you experienced when we are talking about the meditative arts?
No, there are so many. I think what would be helpful for people to kind of see how easily these changes can start to affect people in different ways is to understand some of the core underlying principles when we're creating meditation lifestyle. And these are what I call the 5 regulations. They are regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. And briefly, I'll kind of dive into each one of them so we can see how some of these changes will affect us. Now, regulating the body is where we usually begin. And it's one of the first things because it's so easy to change with a little consistent effort that we see immediate benefits from this. And an example would be, think about a time when you've been sitting down at your computer for 3 or 4 hours, maybe your shoulders are rounded forward, you're starting to slouch a little bit and your neck's getting tight and you're feeling very depleted. And then another time when the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel like you're on top of the world. Well, these 2 different energetic states we're in 100% control of all day, every day. So our ability to regulate our body's structure and alignment and our physical relaxation and tension and our awareness on how we move throughout the day can play a huge role in how we move energetically, mentally, and emotionally. Now, on a little bit of a deeper level of this body regulation is, are we maintaining some sort of muscular structure in the body and flexibility? Are we eating a healthy diet to keep our energy levels up and not feel sluggish from the food we eat? Are we getting enough sleep so we feel recharged for the next day? All of these are part of that body regulation, which is the first pillar. The second pillar is regulating the breath. And this is an extremely deep topic and something that we could literally talk for hours about. Qigong is often referred to as the science of the breath because there's hundreds of different breathing strategies, and we use these to circulate the energy in the body to get different physical, mental, and emotional outcomes in the body. And an example of this would be on the yin side of the breath, which is more of a calming side of the breath. If you ever listen to somebody sleep, this is an example of yin breath that we all do every day. Their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so if we want to resonate with this style of energetic expression in our meditative practice, we can lengthen the inhales, put soft retentions at the end of the inhale to help bring that energy inward. And this is great for stress reduction, dealing with anxiety and panic attacks. It's good for boosting our creativity. There's lots of reasons why we would use this yin side of the practice. Then we have the yang side of the breath. This is more aggressive. And an example of this would be if you ever had to push your car, or you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to exhale and put tension in the breath. And this helps charge the body and bring that energy outward. Now, here's where this gets interesting, because when we start learning how to use the breath strategically, we can now use it to control our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Everybody goes through the day with emotional ups and downs. Some people may be like a roller coaster, others may be a little more balanced. But when you start to learn how to use the breath and you see yourself starting to get excited, you can use the breath to help bring you back down. And when you feel yourself seeming depleted, you can use the breath to help pick you back up and charge you up. Using the breath in a strategic way can help us get different outcomes physically, mentally, and emotionally. Then we move into the mind, and we touched on this a little bit. And one of the other most common things I hear from people is that I can't meditate because I can't quiet my mind. And somewhere along the way, people got this misguided idea that in order to be successful with meditation, that you have to reach this state of nirvana and be in this blissful place where nothing bothers you. And I've been very fortunate to train with some amazing meditation teachers through the last 30 years all over the world. And I have never once met anybody who doesn't get distracted when they meditate. So if you feel like you're not failing, that's part of the process. If you sit in a meditation or do a movement practice for 20 minutes and you get distracted 50 times during that session, you recognize the imbalance, you use your posture, your breath, your movement to come back to focus. You just got 50 repetitions on being out of balance and finding center. And if you do that every day, every month, every year, you start to develop this power and this ability to find that center and balance in any stress, which is extremely powerful. There's these two monks that are walking down this old dirt road after a huge rainstorm. They come up to this big mud puddle. And on the other side of the puddles, this beautiful little girl is standing there in a white dress, and she's crying. And the older monk, he hollers across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." So the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle, picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles further down the road. And finally, the younger monk is just furious. And he says, "You know, we're not supposed to touch girls, but you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down and says, "You're still carrying around that girl? I left her back there at the puddle." And how many times in life do we need to get 2 miles down the muddy road before we realize we got to let those things go? This is part of regulating the mind with our meditation practice, noticing these imbalances and understanding how to let them go so we can come back to focus. This is extremely important. Then the fourth pillar of practice is regulating the energy. Once we've reached a competent level in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, we now have the tools to circulate the energy in the body, to lead it inward, to extend it outward, to get different outcomes with our practice. And then the fifth and final regulation is regulating the spirit, which is an extremely profound idea and something that meditation masters will spend their entire life's journey working towards. However, there's elements of regulating the spirit that we all see every day. An example of this would be if you think about a time when you get extremely excited. Oftentimes when we get excited, our body gets tight, sometimes maybe even shake a little bit. You have this reaction. Well, by doing meditation, you're able to mentally increase that excitement while at the same time staying relaxed and focused and centered and rooted, which is what athletes refer to oftentimes as that flow state, because they're able to get to that high performance and that super fine awareness and ability but at the same time feel like they're agile and mobile and can do anything with their bodies. These 5 regulations are kind of the core fundamental principles of any meditation practice, and you can see how they can affect so many different areas of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing just another really meaningful story. Isn't that true, though, that we hang on to all sorts of things in life that don't serve us anymore, be that limiting beliefs or patterns that no longer fit us and no longer serve us in any kind of way. So, what a great, great story to actually take a few moments and internalize and think about how that might be playing out in your own life and across the different spaces in your life. So, thank you for sharing that. And yes, there's a vast amount of different kind of things we can touch on. I'm learning from you as you're explaining all of these different pillars that we can work with. So, is there something in the meditative arts that ties all of that together, sort of a red thread that runs through these columns that you're describing that brings us together? I have a feeling that the breath is an element that kind of runs through a lot of these columns or pillars that you have described. And do we come to a basic building block in the breath that we come back to in these practices?
I can't say that there's any one thing. However, there is one strategy that understanding the strategy can help everything work together and come together. And I call these the 7 links. And the first one is your foundation. If you don't have a good foundation, whether it's a movement practice, a sitting practice, whatever it is, your body's going to be tense, you're going to be out of alignment, your energy is going to be off. So you have to be rooted. Then once you have the root and you're solid in your foundation, you have to have proper alignment. Because if I'm sitting like this in my chair and I'm off to the side, eventually my side's going to start getting tight. My neck might start getting sore. So having that alignment is important. With proper foundation and proper alignment, then we can have relaxation. When we have relaxation, that allows us to have the 4th link, which is a relaxed breath. Because if we don't have the prior 3, our breath is going to be choppy. We're going to hold the breath. We're going to work through pain and tension, and it's not going to be fluid. Once we have those 4 links, the next link in the chain is the mind. The mind has to be present. The mind has to be monitoring the previous 4 and be aware of where to take it with what we're doing so it can stay present. Then once we have all of that, then it's how do we use the energy energetically with the breath or with the movement to get from A to B while keeping all prior 5 links in the chain in tune. And then the next link is the spirit. How do we elevate that energy like we talked about, keeping the prior 6 links in the chain together? So if you understand these basic fundamental ideas on any meditation practice, whether it's movement, sitting, standing, walking, whatever it is, that's kind of a common thread that will help you reach deeper levels in your practice.
I absolutely love how you have these numbered concepts for everything that we talk about. How insightful. And thank you for sharing some of these ideas that you have experienced and gathered in your own journey with the meditative arts and sharing that with our listeners. I have a feeling that a lot of our listeners are going to be curious at this point because you've dispelled a lot of the myths around meditation. You have shared a lot of amazing information for our listeners to tap into. How can our listeners connect with you? How can they work with you? And what kind of programs and services do you offer? If we have a few listeners that are now wanting to maybe dip their toes into meditation to see if that's something for them to try out.
Yeah, so I have a number of different meditation products out there. You could go to theyieldingwarrior.com. I have a 2-week trial up there for my basic online membership where you can check it out for a couple weeks and kind of get introduced to some of these concepts and practices. I'm also right now giving away a free copy of my most recent book, The Yielding Warrior. You can get that at theyieldingwarrior.com/book. just pay for shipping and handling. We'll send you out a copy of the book. And if you don't want a physical copy, you could download a digital copy off of the website as well.
Amazing. It sounds like there's something there for everyone to start getting some resources around them, get information, try out the membership. And does the membership include working with you as well? Or are there any live practices? You mentioned before that it was important to work with a guide or a mentor in this sense. So does that include some work directly with you or a guide as well?
It is set up for me to guide you through the practice so you understand. It's all pre-recorded content. Later in some of my other programs, I do have some live sessions available. However, all of the online membership programs are set up to help where I am your guide through that program, and I show you how to do that. And it is set up that way. What I meant by not having a guide is not having any kind of direction from somebody to help you navigate what path do I want to follow? What programs are going to help me down that path so I get the most out of my time invested? How do I strategically set up my evolving life practice with ritual, active, and philosophical practices? And if you're just randomly trying to figure all that stuff out on your own, it can be very challenging.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like the support there is really invaluable. And I think could also be a really important component of people actually then finding their path and doing this consistently. I think if you're looking for something in the confusion, you're not very likely to actually see this through and find your meditative practice. So that makes a lot of sense. And of course, we will be linking to all of Jeff's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there for his membership, for his book if you'd like a copy, and also for the connection on, assuming you're also on the socials and people can connect with you there. So we'll make sure we link to all of that so our listeners know where to find you. And Jeff, I just want to thank you for being here today and sharing this vast wisdom that you have about your journey, about the meditative arts, and about teaching others to find their practice and sharing that with our listeners today. I truly, truly appreciate it. And thank you for spending this time with me today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Take great care of yourself.
You as well.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejōrni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.